When the app is launched for the first time, you will see that it asks for your permission so that you can allow the app to read the steps data. I'm just going to go ahead and say turn all categories. And now I'm giving the app the permission to read my steps data. I'm also going to say allow application. It will display the data for the last week. Make sure that you are running the application on a real physical device, or else you will not be able to get the real data from the HealthKit. So this is the app that we'll be building in this section. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. In order to initialize the HealthKit or the HK store, we will have to go ahead and import the HealthKit framework. So let's go ahead and do that. Import HealthKit. Great. Now, if you want to initialize the HK Health Store, which is going to give you access to all the health-related data, you can go ahead and create an instance right inside the content view. You can do that. But I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to create my own custom class. I will call it Health Store, which will be responsible for doing any operations related to the HK Health Store. So let's go ahead and create a brand new class. I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. This will be a simple Swift file. Let's go ahead and add a new file, and I will simply call this a health store. The whole point of health store class will be to wrap around all the features of the HK Health Store. So I will go ahead and import HealthKit, and going to go ahead and create Health Store class. Now this class will have the instance of Health Store, so Health Store, which is of type HK Health Store. Keep in mind that Health Store or HK Health Store over here is the way it's going to provide you all the features, all the functionalities that you want to access, like accessing your data, accessing the number of steps, writing the number of steps, accessing anything related to health. You can use HK Health Store for that. Now I do want to initialize the HK Health Store whenever I create an instance of Health Store. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and create an initializer. And in the initializer, first I'm going to check that if the health data is even available or not. This can be done by a simple if check. If HK Health Store dot is health data available. If it is available on this particular device, then we can go ahead and create an instance of the HK Health Store. So make sure that you are performing this check, is health data available or not? Because if you're not performing this step, then you might try to access the health store or the CK Health Store, and at the end it might throw an exception saying that, hey, I'm not even initialized. All right. So now we have created our class Health Store. We can go ahead and use it in our content view. So I'm going to go to my content view, and inside the content view I'm going to go ahead and create a private variable. So private var Health Store, and we are going to use the Health Store, the one that we have just created. So it's just a simple wrapper. And inside the initializer for the content view, in it, I can go ahead and create the Health Store. So Health Store equals to Health Store. The Health Store itself is going to initialize the HK Health Store, as you can see over here. So this part will at least initialize the Health Store. But if you try to run the app, it's not going to do anything. And the reason it's not going to do anything is that we haven't really requested the permission from the user that, hey, can we even access the data that is inside your phone? So we will have to make sure that we are requesting either read data or write access or read access, or even both if we want to access the data which is health related. So let's go ahead and learn about that in the next lecture. So let's talk about that how we can request access from the user that, hey, we want to read the health related data, or we even want to write health related data. The first thing you need to do is make sure that your info.plist file contains the keys necessary to run this app. And this is the health related information. So two keys that you will need is NS Health Share Usage Description and NS Health Update Usage Description. So I'm going to go ahead and add the first key, and I'm going to go ahead and type some description. And for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say this app requires to share or access your health data. And I'm just going to copy this so I can use it again for my separate key. The second key that I want to add is the NS Health Update Usage Description. So let's go ahead and add that also. And I'm just going to use the same exact thing. Obviously, in your actual application, make sure to write a very descriptive message of why you want to access the health-related information or share the usage or update the usage description for the app. After making this change, we can go back to our health store, which is a wrapper around CK Health Store. Inside the Health Store class, we are going to implement the request authorization function. So let's go ahead and implement this function, request authorization, and it's going to take a completion handler. This is our own custom function, so we can pass in anything we want. Basically, we want to create a closure that will be fired whenever the request for authorization is completed. And that closure is going to give you access to either success or false based on this Boolean value. Success if, well, the authorization was successful, and failure meaning false if it was failed, it was not authorized. Before asking for authorization, we also have to specify, well, what exactly are we trying to get? What kind of data are we trying to authorize? Because there's so much stuff HealthKit can do. And what we are trying to get is the step count data. So we have to create step type. This will be HK quantity type. So select the HK quantity type, dot quantity type for a particular identifier, which is HK quantity identifier dot steps count. You can see that the HK quantity type identifier does have a lot of different things that it can keep track of, but we are only interested in the step count, so I'm just going to get the step count part. Now, once we have the step count, we can go ahead and create or get access to our health store. We already have the health store, so I'm just going to say guard let health store equals to self.healthStore. Well, basically, we're simply just unwrapping this. Else, we will go ahead and return the completion block with the value false. We are simply unwrapping the health store so that we can get access to unwrapped version of the health store. Now we have the health store. We can call request authorization. So health store dot request authorization from here. So let's go ahead and call request authorization. To share, now over here, the first part over here is to share, meaning that if we want to write the data, and we're not really interested in writing any kind of data, so I'm just going to pass in an empty array. The second part is, do I need to or do I want to read the data? And yes, that is true because I actually do want to read the step type data. So I'm just going to pass in step type. And the final thing is the completion, which is going to be success and error. Now finally, I can go ahead and call completion, passing in success. And that's it. Let's go ahead and build this. Now we have to make sure that we call request authorization inside our content view. So let's go ahead and jump into our content view. And inside the content view, we can call this whenever the view actually appears. So that means we can implement the onAppear function. And inside the onAppear, first of all, we can go ahead and unwrap health store. So health store equals to health store. Once it is unwrapped, we can go ahead and call health store.request authorization. So let's go ahead and call this function request authorization. This is going to give us a completion, which will be success. Success will either hold the value true or false, depending on if the authorization was successful or not. And once we have that, we can do something else. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in order to run this application successfully, you have to run it on an actual device. So let's go ahead and run the app, and hopefully when we run the app, it is going to ask us authorization that, hey, do we want to share or read and write access to this app? We want to give the read and write access to the app, and you will see the access page being displayed. So let's go ahead and run the app. So I'm going to press the play button. This is going to run the app on an actual phone. This is a physical phone. And it didn't really do anything. I mean, it didn't really ask for any authorization, nothing. And if I go back to my code, I will see this big error message being displayed. You can see that it's saying that missing apple.com developer HealthKit entitlement. So we still need to we still need to add the capabilities for our project to use HealthKit, which we haven't done. So let's see how we can do that. I'm going to go to my actual target, which is Just Walking, the project. And I'm going to go to the actual iOS target because that's where I'm running, and then select Signing and Capabilities. Now, I'm going to click on this plus button. And in the plus button, we can go ahead and search for HealthKit because that's the module or framework we want to add, or the capability we want to add. Let's double click on this. And now basically what's going on is that Apple is signing our provisioning profiles and is creating entitlements so that our application can now use HealthKit data. With this change in place, let's go ahead and run the application again. And we'll see that this time, after adding the capabilities, when we run the app, it actually gives us this nice health access page where it tells us that, hey, do we want to give access to this Just Walking app to read the data? And I can go ahead and click on the steps, or I can just say turn on all the categories. So turn on all, there we go. And I will say allow. And then it goes away. And that's it. That's how you will give access to the actual app that is trying to access any HealthKit data. Now, once we have given access to the app so that it can read the data from the phone, the next step would be to find out that how we can calculate the steps. So let's go ahead and learn about that in the next lecture. All right, so our next step is to calculate the steps. I'm going to jump into Health Store and going to implement a function which will be called calculate steps. So calculate steps. This is going to take in a completion handler, and it is going to be returning us a HK statistics collection. Now, what is HK statistics collection? Basically, every day it's going to calculate steps because that's what we want, but we can also calculate some other stuff like swimming and workouts and all those kind of things. And it is going to give us statistics collection object which we can enumerate, and we can get access to every single day. So if you're saying that, hey, I want to access or I want to get the statistics for the last week, like 7 days ago, we can get the collection, we can enumerate it, and we can get every single day, we can get out the number of steps that we took. Okay, so calculate steps. First of all, we need to tell our statistics collection, or whenever we are trying to query these steps, that what kind of thing that we are after. Since the HK Health Store can allow you to access many different kind of things like swimming data, bicycling data, workouts, this and that, we are saying that, hey, we're only interested in steps. So that's why we're going to say the HK quantity type is step count. We're only interested in step count. Next, we need to define the start date. So I'm just going to say start date, and I'm going to say calendar. So where should we start? Should we start from yesterday till today? Should we start from a day ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago? I'm just going to go ahead and say 1 week ago, so 7 days ago. So date, and we can say over here by adding, there we go, this one. And let's see which one we're going to use. By adding a date component, and that date component will be day, to, or the value in this case, and the value that I'm going to add is -7, which means that we are going back 7 days, and then date, till current date. So basically a week ago. All right. Next up is we want to get something called the anchor date. The anchor date and the anchor time is more important, is when will your day actually start, so, or what time your day actually starts. So that is called the anchor date. And we can easily find out the anchor date. So I'm just going to copy some code over here. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to extend the date. So we can just put it right here. That's perfectly fine. But it will be much better if you put this inside a different file. Monday at 12 a.m. So if I call Monday at 12 a.m. function, I will get that particular anchor date, which basically means Monday at 12 a.m. So I'm going to go ahead and say let anchor date equals to date.monday at 12 a.m. So basically our day will start at 12 a.m. All right. And we are interested in calculating daily. So I'm just going to go ahead and create another variable daily, and I will say date components, and I'm going to go ahead and ask day, which will be 1. Correct. Now I can use something called HK or HealthKit query.predicate for samples. So I'm just going to create a predicate variable, and I will say HK query.predicate for samples. So sample basically means that it's going to tell us, this is basically the predicate or the search query that we're building, and this is going to allow us to access the samples, the sample data from the start date, so start date, to the end date, which is today, whatever today is, and we can go ahead and also put strict start date. This means that the sample must fall within the time period. Now, in order to perform this query, we have to use something called HK statistics collection query. And you'll see that a lot of different arguments go inside this query. So let's go ahead and fill this out. The first argument is the quantity type. And we are looking for quantity type, which is of step type. So the step type can just go right there. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go, step count or step type. Quantity sample predicate. Well, luckily for us, we also have the predicate, which we created on line number 37. So we'll pass in the predicate. some sort of the options that you want to pass in. You have many different options, but what we want is the cumulative sum. So I'm just going to pass in cumulative sum, which basically means that maybe one day you had your iPhone in your pocket and you were not wearing the watch. So the steps were calculated using your iPhone. But the next day you went for running and you were wearing your watch and you were not carrying your iPhone. So the steps were calculated using the Apple Watch. So cumulative sum basically means that we want to calculate it using the iPhone plus using the watch. Anchor date, we're just going to go ahead and pass an anchor date. Interval components daily, because we are interested in basically calculating it daily. Now this is going to return you HK statistics collection query, which we want to store. So I'm just going to go on the top over here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a variable query, which is of type HK statistics collection query. Now whenever this returns, I can simply assign it. So I can say query equals to something. All right. Now finally, I can go ahead and create the actual callback handler, which is initial results handler. The initial results handler is going to get fired whenever we execute the query. Now you can go ahead and do a get, if, let, and all that stuff if you want. That's perfectly fine. Now this is going to return you the query. So I'm just going to say query, and it's going to return you statistics collection. So I'm just going to copy it. It's a long variable name. I'm just going to give it. So I'm just going to call it statistics collection, and the error if there are any errors. Once we have the statistics collection, we can go ahead and fire our completion, passing in the statistics collection. Now, right now, it's not really going to do anything, because even though we have created a query, we have not really executed it. So let's go ahead and do that. If let health store equals to health store, and also let query equals to self.query, I can go ahead and execute health store.execute query and passing in the query. Perfect. So this means that if we call now our calculate steps, is going to say that, hey, we're interested in step count. We're going to create the start date, anchor date daily, because we want to get the steps calculated daily. The predicate, which is more for searching, which will start from start date and end date. We create the HK statistic collection query, and then we execute the query. All right. And where should we call this? Well, we should call this inside our content view when we are authorized. So let's go ahead and jump into our content view. You can see that in the content view, we can check over here that if it was successful, then we can go ahead and say, well, at this point, we can actually call health store dot calculate steps. So calculate steps, and this is going to return you statistics collection. So statistics collection in, and we can unwrap statistics collection because it is going to be nullable. So I'm just going to say if let statistics collection equals to statistics collection, and then over here I can update the UI or the user interface. But before I do that, I do want to see that what exactly is inside statistics collection, if there's any object inside there. So I'm just going to go ahead and just simply print it out. This is going to give us a little bit of indication that there is something inside the statistics collection. All right. Now let's go ahead and run this. And once the app is running, we can go back to our output window, and we can see that it is going to give us, hopefully it will print out the object content. It's not really going to display anything on the screen, it's just hello world. Now if we go back, you can see that at least it is printing it out. It's not nil or anything like that. So this is an indication that statistics collection object does contain something, but we still have to get this thing out. I mean, it's an object. We still have to iterate this object, and we should be able to get the steps and also the date on which the steps were actually taken. So let's go ahead and do that in the next lecture. In the last lecture, you learned about how to calculate the number of steps, and it gave you the number of steps in a form of HK statistics collection. And we are simply printing out the collection on line number 29. But what we want to do is we want to access the steps, and we also want to populate our own custom model. So let's go ahead and do that. Right inside the content view, I'm going to create a separate function. This will be a private function. We will call this update UI from statistics. And we are going to be passing the statistics collection. So I'm just going to create a variable named statistics collection, which will be of type HK statistics collection. Now, in order to calculate the number of steps, we can use statistics collection dot enumerate. And you'll see that in order to enumerate, we have to provide the from date, to date, and then it is going to give us the statistics. So let's go ahead and calculate the start date. The start date is 7 days ago, so we can use the same exact code. The end date is today, or whatever date is right now. And we can simply pass in the start date and end date, and we can get the statistics collection associated with that date. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in the start date. I'm going to go ahead and pass in the end date. And this is going to give me statistics. So I'm just going to call it statistics. And this will be the pointer for stopping the enumeration. Great. Now inside enumeration, we need to access the number of count. So count, this is the number of steps, statistics dot sum quantity dot double value for dot count. Basically, we're looking for the count, the number of steps. Now the question is, where should we store these steps? For that, we're going to create our model. So I'm just going to create a new group, and I will call it models. Inside the model, I'm going to go ahead and create a new Swift file, and I will call it step. The whole point of this model is to associate steps and the date. Now, if we were creating a MVVM application, meaning the MVVM design pattern, I would create a view model. But we are simply going to create a simple model that we can use. So struct step. Now, since we want the steps to be displayed in a list, I'm going to make sure that I'm conforming to identifiable. Next up, we can go ahead and create a field called ID, and we can initialize it with UUID. We will create another property called count, which will be the number of steps. And you can use double over here, or you can use int. It's completely up to you. I'm just going to use int. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and create a date instance, which is the start date or the date for those number of steps. Now let's go back to the content view. And inside the content view, we should now be able to get the steps and create our step instance. I'm going to go ahead and create a step instance. I will call it step. And you can see that I need to pass in the count as an integer. So I'm going to go ahead and pass in the count. And if the count is null or something, we're just going to pass 0. and a particular start date, which I can also get from statistics.startDate. Perfect. Now I need to store this step somewhere, and for that I'm going to go ahead and create another variable. This will be a state property. So I'm going to go ahead and say state private var steps, and this will be of type step, and we can also go ahead and initialize this to be saving step instances. Now keep in mind that since we are not using the MVVM design pattern, I'm using this state property wrapper right over here. If I was using MVVM design pattern, then I would most probably create a view model that will have the steps as a publish property wrapper or observable object. Now let's go ahead and add the steps. So steps dot append the new element, which in this case is step. Perfect. So now finally we have to make sure that once we are receiving the steps, which is right over here, after calculating the steps, we have to call the update UI from statistics. So instead of the print, let's go ahead and call that function and pass in the statistics collection. Perfect. In the next video, I'm going to show you that how you can display the steps on the screen. So let's go ahead and check it out, that how we can display all the steps coming from the HealthKit in a list control. All right, so now let's go ahead and finally see that how we can display the steps that are coming from the HealthKit. We have already populated the steps inside our steps array, and now we can go to the body property, which is a render function, and remove the text and substitute it by using a particular list. So list steps ID property that we are going to be using will be the ID, and we can use the ID property because steps is an array which contains objects of type step, which contains the ID property. We're going to say step in, and finally we can go ahead and display these steps. So I'm just going to say text, and we're going to display these steps using a string interpolation step.count. Apart from the steps, you can also display the date associated with the step. So since we want to display the date underneath the number of steps, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the text into a vertical stack. There we go. And for the date, I can simply say step.date. And the cool thing is that I can also use the style and specify that it will be of type date. And we can also provide a little bit different opacity. So opacity will be, let's say, half, 0.5. Now, once again, you do need a real device to run this application so that the HealthKit can find the number of steps from your actual device. So let's go ahead and run it. And hopefully we'll be able to see all the steps being displayed on the actual device. This is our actual device. And we're just waiting for the applications to start. And there we go. We can see all the different steps from a week ago. So July 6th till July 13th. We can go ahead and organize it a little bit more better. We are using a VStack. We can use the alignment of the VStack, and we can say leading. By the way, this feature of putting or formatting the date is available in iOS 14, and I am using the Xcode 12 beta version, but I think all of the code can be written for any version, like the previous version of iOS, except for this part, the date part. The other thing that I want to do is I want to wrap everything around with a navigation view. So I'm going to go ahead and start a navigation view right over here on the top. I can say navigation view. We're going to wrap the list around with the navigation view. There we go. And we're going to also say the navigation title. And I'm just going to put the title to be Just Walking, which is the name of our app. Now let's go ahead and run the app again, making sure that we are running it on an actual device. And now when we run, we can see the navigation bar being displayed and all the steps. Pretty cool, right? So in this section, you have learned that how you can integrate your SwiftUI application with the HealthKit and to get the data and to be displayed in a list control. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video, and hey, don't forget to download the source code attached with this lecture in the resources section. Thank you so much. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my courses on Udemy. I have a brand new course which is SwiftUI Declarative Interfaces for any Apple device. This is the most comprehensive course available on Udemy. You can actually see that this is around 17.5 hours, the longest course and the most comprehensive complete course on SwiftUI anywhere. You can see that we start with creating and combining views, building lists and navigation. Then we even dive into the MVVM design pattern, learning how to use MVVM design pattern to create our next SwiftUI applications. I'm also covering the core data integration and also Swift recipes, which includes building a rating view, downloading images, and now I'm also covering all the Swift 2.0 changes. You can see there are a lot of changes coming up. We're already over an hour of changes, and I keep on adding new things. The best way to get this course is check out the description of YouTube. And in the YouTube description, you will not only find a link to the SwiftUI course, but you will also find many different links for all of my courses. And I would really appreciate if you want to show the support, then check out my other courses. I just released another course on Vapor 4, which allows you to write Swift applications or APIs using Swift on the server and on the cloud, which is an amazing course. So definitely check that out. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your continuous support.